Good evening, everyone. Thank you for stopping by, being here with us. I'm Fernando Guimarães, astrologer from Brazil, but I used to live in Boston for several years and be part of the NCGR and also AFAN and some other groups so I'm really thrilled to have English speaker here with us, and we have also some colleagues from Europe and South America that also can understand. Later I will try to see if artificial intelligence will help me to put subtitles and help doing the translation. Hopefully when Uranus is and Gemini, we will be able to watch any videos, any lives, or lectures in any language in the world having translation. So thank you very much. I will introduce you my guests. Tonight we will be talking about very interesting topics. One, for those that really are researching the asteroids into astrology, and also those who like the mundane astrology and political astrology. So let me introduce you. It's right here with us from San Francisco, California, Alan Ling. I will talk, a little bit about him, but then he will, talk about himself. Usually we start the conversation and the live chat with asking about the guests' interest, how they got into astrology, their interest, their authors, favorite authors, and etc., and their research and everything else. At the end of the live show, I will give his contact for those who would like to visit his blog and to know his services and everything else. So what I have here, let me see. Okay, we start this. Alan is an astrologer and violinist for nearly 3 decades now, and conduct extensive research into new techniques. Just like me, we like new things and respect the tradition as well. Provide readings for clients and research. He's an expert of practical interpretation of the asteroid Pallas Athena, and has examined Pallas on thousands of astrological charts, and have created what he believes to be the largest knowledge base in existence on this topic. That this includes interpreting Pallas, lecture, and libertarian astrology that we'll be talking. Also, I'll give his website, and you can see everything else. So, Alan, thanks for being with us here. Good afternoon for you. It's good evening for me and for people past midnight, I guess, in London and Portugal that I invite people, but this will be recorded and stay here for visitors. Thank you.
Glad to be with you, Nando. I guess if you want me to start talking, I can talk about how I originally got into astrology.
Yes.
Which was in the early 1990s. I was actually very skeptical about astrology. I didn't believe in it. I thought it was just metaphysical mumbo jumbo. And what changed my mind was that there was one day when I found myself in a friend's apartment in New York City, where I did not live. So I was visiting New York City, and I decided to move there during my trip. And so on the last day of my trip to New York City, I decided to interview for jobs in Manhattan on my last day, and then I would fly back. And so I'm currently in California. I will probably move back to New York City at some point. But back to my story. I found myself in a friend's apartment in Manhattan in New York City a few hours before a job interview that I was going to have. And so there was a few hours to kill. I started looking at my friend's books, and my friend possessed quite a number of basic astrology books, and there was nothing else to read in the apartment. So what I did was I started looking at some of the basic astrology books, and the thing that caught my eye was an ephemeris of the major planets, including the Earth, Mars, et cetera, et cetera. And I started cross-referencing the dates when Mars hit a particular position in the zodiac versus events in my own life. And to my horror and shock and surprise,
Yes.
I learned that certain positions of Mars in the zodiac were extremely highly correlated to a specific recurring event in my life. And so that was my first real exposure to the power of astrology. It was through empirical data rather than, simply believing it on faith or learning it because it was a popular way of thinking about things. So after that point, I started to become more and more interested in astrology. I attended lectures at the San Francisco NCGR. I had two major mentors, I would say, in my astrological educational journey. One of them would be Lene Van Horn, who is a San Francisco native. And back in the day, she used to be quite a teacher of astrology, really, really excellent teacher. And then later on, I took many, many classes with William Stickevers, who's quite, the master of modern mundane astrology and who's done lots of groundbreaking, interesting, and accurate predictive work.
I see.
So that's my kind of astrological backstory. That's how I learned, was basically through attending lectures and taking classes from mostly these two teachers. The way I got interested in Pallas was Pallas Athena, the asteroid, was partially an accident. So it was the late 2000s, so around 2000, I want to say 2006. And I guess, so I'm trying to remember. So it must have been the second term of George W. Bush, Jr. as president.
I see.
And so I was, I've always been extremely anti-war, and so anti-war, anti-violence, pro-peace, those kinds of issues were always the center of my political thinking. And up until that point, in the early 2000s, I believed what many people believed and continue to believe, which was that the political left was the peace party, right? So the Democrats in America were the ones that cared about peace, and the Republicans were, crazy, violent warmongers. And, to this day, that's still somewhat believed. But I started becoming very interested in the nitty gritty of politics and trying to figure out, well, what actually makes people tick astrologically in terms of their political ideology. And at the same time, I was becoming disillusioned with the Democratic Party, because what happened in 2006 was there was a midterm election. So it was between presidential elections, and we were electing basically a new Congress. And the political discourse of that day in around 2006 was that, okay, now we've had a number of years of Republican wars, in the Middle East, and in order to stop the wars and bring back civil liberties in America, we had to elect the Democrats. So let's go out, fight, elect a Democratic left-wing, Congress, and then they will stop the Bush program, stop the wars, restore civil liberties, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what happened. We elected the Democrats to an overwhelming majority, if I remember correctly, in 2006. And then when they took office in 2007, they did everything that their predecessors did. They did everything the Republicans did, only they made it worse, right? So a lot of us who were paying attention became more disillusioned with the political process. So during this time, I became very interested in, again, the nuts and bolts of, well, what actually makes the parties different? Are there alternative parties that work? And as a result of that's why I became interested in the libertarian mode of thought, which was definitely a very small minority party and still is. But they had a separate ideology that was very, you could say, more clearly defined than the mainstream left and right. And so here's where the astrology comes in, which is during this whole time, because I was an astrologer by then, I was trying to figure out if there was an astrological pattern that could actually help us predict or tell what type of political ideology a person would gravitate towards based on their astrological birth chart. And here's where I had just the most ridiculous stroke of luck, because some of the first case studies I did were of the most high-profile extreme libertarians I could find. And so I could name them. So one of them was Lou Rockwell, Ron Paul was the big one, and G. Edward Griffin. So huge libertarian figures in the fringe libertarian movement. It just so happens that all three of them have an extremely tight Sun-Pallas natal conjunction.
I see.
So that was the tip-off. It was almost like a, if we believe in supernatural forces, which I kind of do. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's, forces and intelligences.
Synchronicity, maybe?
Right, well, whatever it is. Like, it could be synchronicity, it could be astrology itself, the character of the moment in time acting,
yes.
In my life at that moment. It could be a greater power, such as God.
Yeah.
I'm open to all of those ideas because I don't claim to know
I'm
how
glad.
the
Yeah.
place runs, right? But whatever it was as if information had descended upon me from elsewhere, because the fact that these three men at the top of this political movement had exactly the same astrological configuration with regards to the sun and Pallas, that was that would have taken me years to discover if I'd done it without help. So from there, I started trying to figure out, okay, well, Pallas has something to do with libertarianism. And libertarianism, if you go very deeply into the weeds of that particular political philosophy, is not actually about maximizing liberty. It's actually about, if you go into the weeds of the philosophy and the way these people think, it's actually about maximizing something like rationality and logic and applying that to ethics and politics and public policy, something like that. So from there, it was a lot of grunt work, but I knew exactly where to look. And so I started comparing people from across the political spectrum with regards to the placement of their natal Pallas Athena on their birth chart. And from there, hundreds, thousands of charts later, the patterns became extremely clear. That's so interesting. Basically speaking, so it's, it works about 95% of the time. You can predict with a very high degree of accuracy where someone is going to fall on the political spectrum with regards to, let's say, libertarianism versus authoritarianism. 95% of the time, that's going to be pretty explicitly in the birth chart.
Okay, so maybe it's a good time now for us to talk about some terminology used, like solid aspect or fluid aspect, that I was trying to guess if, like hard aspect or something like this. Fluid and hard. No, fluid and solid, you say. So can you talk about this a little bit? And also you include, besides Pallas, you also talk a lot about Venus, a lot about the moon. So I thought it was so interesting. And we first talked so many years ago. Remember, I said, oh, please, I asked you permission to translate some into Portuguese and publish.
Right. So so this whole bit about Pallas and, libertarianism versus authoritarianism, that's one dimension of political ideology or political thinking. But of course, if you've looked at the range of political ideology and political thinking, you know that that's not all there is to the political spectrum. So the political spectrum, as I and many non-astrologers actually conceptualize it, is a three-dimensional system. So it's not so the mainstream of the world thinks about left and right. They think about, here's one line, you're left or right, and you're somewhere in the middle. And that's a one-dimensional way of thinking about things. But if you really want to capture the depth and the complexity of the political spectrum, you actually need at least three dimensions. So what we've been describing with regards to Pallas Athena is one dimension. That's the, again, libertarian to authoritarian spectrum. There's other ways to describe it. We can get into that maybe later. So the other two dimensions, which are easy to parse, as I see them, are cultural. So having to do with the moon and the fourth house and the sign of Cancer. And then the third dimension, I would say, is economic. So having to do with Venus or the second house or the sign of Taurus. So basically, the political spectrum, the way I conceptualize it in astrology, is controlled by three feminine planets. So Pallas Athena, goddess of wisdom, controls, again, authoritarianism versus libertarianism. The moon controls culture, race, tradition, those sorts of things. So that's the moon. And then the third dimension, economics, controlled by Venus. And if you can roughly locate the way that, those three planetary goddesses are configured in a particular horoscope, then you can, in my opinion, with a high degree of accuracy, describe the politics of the person who owns that chart or the nation that owns that chart. Hold on, hanging up on my phone. Now, the way you actually place those three planetary goddesses in the spectrum, in the three different spectra that they exist in, is actually somewhat complicated. So I can spend a few minutes describing it and, basically transmit the details, but in a way it's hard to get until you see a lot of examples. But the way I basically describe the libertarian to authoritarian spectrum, which is controlled by Pallas Athena, is basically the easiest way to remember it is through Christian symbolism. So in Christian symbolism, there's basically a good Trinity, right? There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And there's sort of a bad Trinity, which is not explicitly in the Bible, but it's implied, which is the devil, the flesh, and the world. Okay. So the way these two Trinities, the good Trinity and the evil Trinity, interact with Pallas Athena actually places you on the libertarian to authoritarian spectrum. So the good Trinity, Father, Son, Spirit, is Sun, Mercury, North Lunar Node.
Oh.
Okay, so that's your good Trinity using the Christian metaphor, which is the best metaphor I have for this particular part of the theory.
Yes.
The bad Trinity, so the devil is Pluto, the flesh is the South Lunar Node, and the world is Jupiter. So basically, you find Pallas Athena on the astrological chart you're trying to measure, and you figure out which Trinity is more powerful.
Oh.
And usually, in the vast majority of charts, it's a mix. Everyone's got, things that are good and things that are evil. And in real life, the people that are capable of the most evil are both. Right? Because if you're 100% evil, you'll just land yourself in a prison cell, at a very young age. If you have both good and evil in very, very high measure, then, you can do a lot of good things. You would advance to high places, and then you can do great evil. So you can be Hitler or Stalin or, Mao. Those kinds of extremely destructive personalities are not 100% evil. They're evil, but they're more powerful because they contain a lot of good, you could say. So the nuts and bolts about how these trinities interact with Pallas Athena on the chart, there's all kinds of exceptions and strange little rules that maybe this isn't the best avenue to go into, but basically that's the idea. Now, so you mentioned that some terminology that I sort of coined about how to deal with Venus and the moon. So I talked about solid and liquid kind of configurations. And these were the best ways I could think of describing the sorts of astrological effects that my theory employs with regards to the Venus and the moon. So starting with the moon, which in my theory represents culture, there are things that make the moon or your sense of culture and, racial, cultural pride, national pride, all of that stuff. There are things that make that lunar characteristic more solid. And it can be, the moon is elevated, highly elevated in the chart. It can be the moon's in Cancer, or the sign of Cancer is extremely strong in your chart. It can be, but the most powerful factor is actually the lunar nodal axis. So if you have something like the North Node in the 4th house, or the North Node conjunct or trine the moon, that tends to be an extremely powerful, you could say, solidifying factor for the moon. And if you have that factor, not all the time, but most of the time, as you mature and grow into your potential, you're going to become more culturally conservative and have more of a strong valuation for tradition and culture and those kinds of things. So those are the solidification kind of factors. The more liquefying factors are easier to notice, which are South Node and Venus and the sign of Pisces. And also the 12th house. So you have the moon in the 12th, and the moon is trine the south node or opposite Neptune or something like that. Those are all liberalizing factors. They liquefy or make more fluid that which I propose the moon suggests, which is, again, the sense of race, culture, tradition, desire to preserve the mode of being of the past. So that's in a nutshell. And again, there's all kinds of weird little wrinkles we could get into if we wanted to. But
that's clear now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's clear now. That's good. Well, I just I.
So let me just say one thing, and I'll.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just say one thing quickly, which is the Venus is exactly the same thing.
Oh.
Right. So if Venus is solid, right, it's in Taurus, it's in a trine the North Node, or if the North Node is in the 2nd, et cetera, you're more capitalist.
Oh, and basically like the dignities and yes, Venus related to Taurus is more materialistic, is earthy, and
yes.
Money.
It's liquefied or made more liquid by the South Node, Venus, the South Node, Neptune, 12th house, sign of Pisces, etc. So it's basically almost identical to the way that I propose we interpret the moon in terms of natal aspects.
Okay, and would you need to share the screens to show any charts, or or how can you talk about the examples? I said, we can use some international examples for English speaking audience, but I asked you if you had some of Brazilian politicians that we can relate it to. Would you like to share screens, or you just talk?
Sure, I can do that. Let me see if I can Okay,
Okay.
present.
So while Alan is preparing to show us that, some people, some teachers in the past say astrologer really like to see, presentation, astrological charts, celebrities or whatever. So when we go to conference, and that's true. I would like to show you, like it's, like intermission, to show you a place here very close to my place in the rural area of Campinas, very close to São Paulo, capital city in Brazil, and we are having conference next National Day, Brazilian National Independence Day, September 7th. So I would like to show to our foreign friends to see maybe someday you would like to come here. We can have like an astrological get together and visit this astronomical observatory. And I would just show you a few pictures and let Alan to get the chart. So see the pretty of this place and let me know what you think about. Yes. How do you like it? The pictures, Alan?
Very nice. So
yes.
I had, so you mentioned a bunch of charts that you were curious about, Nando, and
Yes.
I actually have them all loaded onto my Solar Fire program.
Oh my
What
goodness.
I can't figure out how to do is to share my screen. There's something blocking my screen sharing, and I can't figure out what that is.
On the bottom of our our studio, you can see like a TV and with a cross and say and if you press it, it shows at the bottom share screen. When you share a screen, you have to choose between like the windows of you read about which kind of screen it's showing, and you pick one of them that probably is going to be your Solar Fire screen with charts. You have three options, like full screen, window screen, and guide, Chrome guide. So see if you can.
Yes, so I was attempting to share my entire screen, and it wouldn't let me do that. It said I need to change some kind of setting. It said my browser has blocked my screen. Click the screen icon in your address bar to allow access, but I don't have a screen icon in my address bar. So maybe I'll try something else.
Okay.
I'll try loading. I'll try sharing an individual chart.
Okay.
And see if that works. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an astrological chart for Lula. I hope I entered the data in correctly. It's October 27th, 1945, 6:13 a.m. in Brazil.
Yes.
Okay, so I know nothing about Brazilian politics. So it's possible that I'm about to embarrass myself.
No, that's a favor.
But if I was using my normal methodology to try and figure out where on the political spectrum this person is, I would first look at Pallas. So we're looking at the, again, the libertarian to authoritarian spectrum. And I see, well, Pallas is conjunct Mercury, which is a strongly libertarian factor. Mercury is, Jesus, the Son in the Christian Trinity that we talked about. But Pallas is in the sign of Scorpio, which is the sign that is ruled by Pluto. And Pallas is also square with Pluto, and Pluto is elevated. Pluto is the kind of the highest planet in the chart. So I would say that, again, knowing nothing about this personality, most likely this is a very intelligent but very authoritarian personality. And probably a very, and again, a very possibly effective authoritarian, someone who can project power and be very good at holding on to it. So that would be my guess about this particular dimension of this person. Because as I said before, the 100% evil charts, they usually self-destruct at a young age, because if you do nothing but evil, you end up in prison. If you do good and then do some evil and then do more good and then do a lot of evil, you can get more evil done. Right?
Yeah, so, as a typical Scorpio, he divides people who hate him and wants his death, and people who loves him. People. So, but he is in our like brand new democracy after the military 20 years military government that we had in the 70s. He is in the democratic way. He was elected. He's in the third term, so he was elected 3 times, and he works very well with the international community of the leaders when they go to to the G7 or G10 or the groups of so he got all of this attention. So and he is the president of the Socialist Party, or the works labor. Let's say about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, his time of birth was not very clear, and there is a lot of speculation about the ascendant. But it seems that a lot of seniors, astrologer in Brazil, have rectified or have been over 20 years have made projections and predictions to this ascendant. So we agreed that will work.
Great. So we've looked at one dimension, which is the libertarian to authoritarian spectrum. The second place I'd like to look, again, is the culture, right? So the moon, so nationalism versus internationalism, that sort of thing. So here we have a highly elevated moon in Cancer. So that tends to move you a little to the right, maybe in some cases a lot to the right. And now I'm looking for mitigating factors. So for instance, the moon is 30 plus 4, 34, 40 degrees approximately away from Neptune. So that moves it a bit to the left. And then if we look for the position of the moon relative to the lunar nodal axis, we see quincunx 150 degrees away from the south lunar node. So in terms of culture, we don't know. He could end up anywhere, especially because if the lunar nodes are involved, the lunar nodes are a little bit of a wild card, but they're more powerful than anything else in the system with regards to my theory, right? So this guy could end up hard left, or he could end up significantly on the right in terms of culture.
Yeah, I think as a Cancer, they say nationalists, they say Brazil first, when the people say America first or France first. So it's, national culture, about the athletics, about the music, and, so he is really into the Brazilian culture, which I think it's, very Cancer, related to the nation and culture tradition. Yeah.
Economically, he looks extremely left-wing. So I say that because Venus is tightly conjunct with Neptune, and the south node is in the second house. So if we look at all 3 dimensions at once, typically this would be I don't like the word, but it's kind of like right-wing fascist kind of pattern, because most of your traditional right-wing fascists in the 1940s actually were originally communists. Right. So especially, what's his name? The Italian guy.
Uh,
Mussolini. Mussolini
Mussolini.
was originally very, very tight with the communists, and he branched off. But basically, the way I sort of see this particular pattern of these three dimensions is someone, you know, kind of like a national socialist type.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's right. I haven't looked too far into Brazilian politics.
Well, I think whoever is watching us, and you know, they can tip in, and you know, I'm not as specialized in geopolitics or you know anything like this, and I would have you know maybe a sense to say he really are into you know into the leadership of you know using economy, sharing economy to end poverty and starving. So that's his discourse, his talk in the United Nations, and it's nothing, you know, it's nothing new to the whole world. So that was, you know, he's loved and hated at the same time for different, you know, social level of, you know, voters or whatever. But you really described a lot of this what you mentioned about Neptune, Venus, Moon, and Mercury and second house. I agree. So as you said, it's a different culture. Whatever worked, you know, decades ago in Italy, maybe it shows different in South America today because of the relationship, you know, that we have. Like the U.S. and Brazil, they were colonies of, you know, European governments. So each one, and while the you know Protestants in America was in Brazil was the Catholic, the Jesuits, Catholic, Portuguese, you know, a lot of this how Mediterranean influence, some Italians. So we can see, like, if we're like Asian, maybe it would work in a different way. You know, this authoritarian or libertarian. If we're in the Middle East, maybe differently as well, or you know, European. So as you said, the cultural background, DNA is very, very strong, and I relate
Yeah.
it. I can
No, I
relate.
agree. I agree. I think you know, knowing what I know about kind of Asian psychology is it's different enough from the West that you're going to get different kinds of political systems, even given the same basic factors.
Yeah.
So,
And then we can see this in Indian how that play out, in Russian how that play out, in Arabic world how that play out. So you know it's true. Yeah, it's true.
but yeah, again, one thing I would reiterate about this chart is, again, I don't know this person very well at all. I haven't read the news, but probably Lula is extremely smart.
He is extremely smart. Yeah, people tease him because he came from you know like those how to say that, almost like desert land from you know northeast Brazil, and he didn't have a proper education, although he got you know like this doctorate degree from Salamanca University in Spain. But people tease him the way he speaks, that he you know people say that he has no degree, no college education, and but he's extremely smart. He comes up with some ideas that impresses people, leadership in the G7, G10, or about you know like in the United Nations, his position about this elections in Venezuela. He say you know show the documentation. He does say well we, you know, is the same thing about the you know the Palestinian and Israeli. He said this. He said in the world, and people were scandalized because this is a genocide, and people say, oh, and he was talking about you know like World War II, about you know those politics. But then when people think about the context what he speaks, it seems that he has a very intuitive way of thinking, and he doesn't express very clearly or use like not politically correct metaphors, but then it end up being that he was sensing what the truth behind political intention, world political intention could be, because he's on the road for many decades. He was like a union leadership during the military dictatorship. So he's very intuitive, and I think he's very smart too. But again, if you ask someone who hates him, they're going to talk something.
Right.
People here, they say that he is the dark soul. Like Darth Vader. People say that he's here to. He's a devil's son. He is to destroy Christianity and the world and capitalism and that's what people say, and that's what people see, and that's what people project. So. But he's not a saint, and he's not the devil. That's what I think. And he wouldn't be in his third term if he was not capable of being like this in the public administration of like a large country like Brazil is.
So do we want to look at Bolsonaro's chart?
Yes, please. I think it's a good balance, to show what we think it's opposite to, at least in the election, right?
All right. So I'm gonna wish me luck. I'm gonna try and share.
Okay. I said a prayer for Mercury retrograde to say usually when say please Mercury, please Uranus and technology, and Jupiter international say, well, please help us.
All right, so we're looking at Bolsonaro's chart. I'm gonna go in reverse this time, because the Pallas situation is it's one of those very interesting cases that requires more attention. So I'm going to start with Venus. Venus is in Aquarius, which is I consider to be neutral. It does not appear to be forming any powerful. So there's extremely weak trine with Neptune, so that may or may not be a factor. And there's arguably no aspect between Venus or the lunar nodes. Now, there's maybe Pluto's in the second house, maybe not. According to my system, Pluto may not matter for economics directly. But if we look at the ruling planet and the planet of the intercepted sign of Virgo for the second house, so we're looking at the Sun and Mercury. So if we look for what's happening with the Sun is square with the nodal axis. So economically, he could turn either way, left or right. If we look at Mercury, we see Mercury is trine with the south lunar node. That tends to push you to the left economically. So basically, economically, he's kind of a mystery to me. So I don't know, he could end up having positions on both sides of the economic spectrum. Culturally, we look at the moon in the fourth house. So we see where's the moon? The moon's in 28 Aquarius, and it is trine with the south lunar node. It's an out of sign trine, but it's relatively tight. So that moves you culturally to the left. And also, if we look for a moon to Neptune aspect, there's also a trine. So there's a grand trine between the moon, south lunar node, and Neptune. And Neptune is very close to the fourth house cusp. The fourth house itself is ruled by Mars, and Mars is not doing anything that I'm too interested in. So basically, there's a pretty strong, I would say, culturally left-wing bias to this chart. But there's a wild card to the chart, which has to do with the Pallas position. So if we were looking at just the economic dimension and the cultural dimension with, you know, Venus and the moon, I would say this is a left-leaning chart. Probably some kind of, you know, middle of the road, you know, moderate liberal chart. But the Pallas position is very interesting. So if we were looking for the, you know, the Christian Holy Trinity, again, we see Pallas is square with, no, it's not square. It's, yeah, square with the midpoint of the Sun and Mercury, which are libertarian kind of right-moving positions. But Pallas is conjunct the North Lunar Node, and the North Lunar Node can trump everything else. So if you have this particular conjunction, the Pallas North Node conjunction, it's possible, it doesn't always happen, but it's possible that this position can override everything else in the chart politically. It can override your cultural positions, it can override your economics, everything. It doesn't always do it, but the conjunction presents the possibility. So even though there's, you know, there's a trine between Pallas and Pluto, the fact that Pallas is next to the North Node, it's a giant wild card, which means that this guy could quite possibly become something like an extreme libertarian. Now, if he doesn't go all the way to extreme libertarian, he could stop somewhere along the way. And usually what's along the way to extreme libertarianism is some kind of moderate right-wing conservatism.
The interesting about this chart is that his Sun 0-degree Aries is it's the same position of Pluto in the national chart. Brazil independence is Pluto is 0-degree Aries.
Wow.
And he has the Sun. So I showed this to an old teacher of ours that passed away, and when he saw during the elections, he said, this man is going to sell the riches of Brazil to foreigners. You know, he's a military. He was like almost, you know, when he was in the military, he tried to put a bomb somewhere to threaten the military if they didn't raise their, you know, their salary, something like this. So he is a funny things to you know, to talk about, because you can see videos that he is praising Hugo Chavez from Venezuela. Then he voted, he said during the, you know, the election, he voted once for Lula. He was, you know, he is a funny thing to say, because it seems that he likes power and he likes the money. So he would go with the flow to which was like convenient at the time. But during his career in politics, after he left the military, he got into politics. So, and he became extremely far right wing. You know, consider now his kids also in politics are connected to the far right wings movement in the whole world. You know, very close to the Trump people. Where is the name of the guy? Oh, I forgot his name. He is in jail now. He was like a mentor for Trump. He was a Sagittarian guy.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
You know, like a strong guy and Sagittarian. I forgot his name.
Bannon. Yeah, Bannon.
Bannon. Yeah. So his kids are very close to Bannon. Yeah, that was their mentor.
Now, so again, I guess the main feature of this chart, the Pallas North Node conjunction, in my opinion, this is the main feature. This makes it extremely hard to place him, because he could end up anywhere. The tendency is going to be towards the right, towards more libertarian thinking, but not everyone with this placement gets all the way there. Now, what was I going to say? interesting what you said about his economic view, kind of selling everything off, because his Venus is opposite his Pluto, and it's square with his Mars. So there's definitely something, there's definitely some contention. It's actually a gigantic T-square, right? So it's square with Mars, it's square with Saturn, it's opposite Pluto. So economically, he may have left wing or right wing views one way or the other, but in terms of what he's actually going to do when he gets with money, I couldn't tell you precisely from the chart, but I can say it's likely to be dramatic and probably controversial.
Very controversial. Yeah, you're right about that. So, yeah, that's funny because people joked about when his mother passed away. He went to the funeral, and right after the service, he took, the number of, the tomb or whatever, and he went to a gambling place to play the number of the mother's, tomb or whatever, to be if he could win the lottery. And so, so people think that he will tell his mother if the Arabs emigrate, they want to pay some money, and he sold like some state companies or whatever to and in exchange he received like $millions jewelry that he tried to sell in the US, and that thinks that FBI is after that, and he is being here almost going into into the high courts to to judge, to see if he's going to jail. He was anti-vax to the point of he mixed up so much that 700,000 people died during COVID without vaccination, so it was like even worse than Trump, I would say. But this is my point of view. Some people think that he is the white horse rider of the apocalypses, that came to say is a savior, and that he is not into corruption. So you see everything in people's mind. I think it's everywhere, not just Brazil or anyways.
Well, speaking of this zero Aries position where he has his sun, that, as you probably know, is the approximate position of the upcoming Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which comes into orb next year. So it may be that anyone with positions around 0 degrees of a cardinal sign is going to really especially feel that upcoming conjunction. And that upcoming conjunction, as I learned from William Stickovers and other people, is strongly associated with political movements, especially that are associated with different economic systems.
Yeah, Neptune is known to be to be more like empathetic with the poverty and share everything with everyone. So I think Neptune in the world axis, it can bring this collective and social worries. But Saturn comes together for about a few years. Saturn is going to stay in Aries, but when he leaves in few years, Neptune is going to stay in Aries for 14 years. So I think the military, the war, athletics, sports, self-made men, startups, a lot of things, CEOs, a lot of Mars areas, archetypes is going to be challenged by Neptune, because they are completely different. Neptune is so subtle, people talk about Pluto and Saturn, this and that, and for the longest time nobody talks about Neptune. Is going that the saying, like water drops in the stone for ages until it makes like a big hole, and say, oh, who knew that water could make a hole in a stone, in a rock, because it's so patient and so slow. So after more than 100 years, Neptune is back in Aries. So let's see what it's, last time it was Neptune in Pisces was when, the the socialism, the Communist Party, and Marx documents came when Neptune in Pisces. So now let's see how it plays into Aries. That's we have to watch that closely.
Yes, well, something about Neptune and Pisces that I've seen from different historical studies is that it seems to be associated with currency devaluations and changes in the world money systems. Right. So the last time we had one, I think we had the California gold rush, which is when the gold standard of the day became devalued because now the supply of gold became massively inflated. And before that, there were other things, bank crashes and European empires and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So arguably, we could be in, if the pattern still holds, we could be in the middle of a major change in the way that the world's monetary systems work.
Yeah, it seems like Uranus in Taurus is preparing this turmoil, right? It's preparing,
yeah, well,
and that's Neptune and Aries going to sextile Uranus and Gemini. So it's going to be, you see, like the chart for July, August 2026. All the slow planets are in the 0-1 degrees of some fire and air signs. We never had that before. Pluto,
right.
Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn. It's going to be, and the nodes are going to be in Aquarius as well. So that's going to be something to see, and it's coming up in 20.
Yeah, actually, let me animate that chart, and we can see what we're looking at.
Okay.
We can. I have to go through this whole rigmarole again. Window, animated page. Oops, I canceled it. Try it again. Share screen, window, animated page. Share. Okay, so you might be able to see this now. Oh, you said it was in 2026?
Yeah.
Was there a particular month you were talking about?
I would talk about August 15th, 26.
Perfect. August 15th. So yes, we are looking at Jupiter's early in Leo, Uranus is early in Gemini. There's a giant grand trine. The two of the planets on the grand trine are kind of fast moving, but there's there's different names for this, but it's something like a grand half trine, right? So we have Pluto trine Uranus with Neptune at the exact midpoint.
Yes.
Creating,
yeah, it's a kite upside down.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah. So but I'm mostly concerned with the outer three planets, and they're all sextile or trine.
Yes. It's almost a little bit before, maybe in July. Jupiter, 0-1 degree Leo is going to be opposite Pluto. It's going to close that.
Let's see, July 15th. So we still have this grand sextile thing, and then we have Jupiter opposite Pluto. You're right.
Oh, can you see the bowl sideways?
Yeah.
The bowl they call, the lead of the bowl is the opposition Jupiter Pluto, and then we have trines and sextile with the slow planets, like a bathtub or a bowl sideways to the bottom of it on the 7th house descendant. Can you see that?
Well, it's definitely a bowl. Yeah.
It's a bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a bowl. One thing I would point out, and we're slightly off the topic of my own personal theory, but this grand sextile pattern with the outer three planets all either trine or sextile, it gets very, very close to the exact pattern in about 3 weeks, right? So right now, actually, I'll bring up the chart. Let's bring up the chart for today.
Yeah, a lot of conjunction. You see Venus and South Node, Pluto, Mars and Uranus, Mercury and the Sun. It's
right.
A lot of conjunctions,
I just want to bring your attention to this. So this is today. This is today in Oakland. but the outer three are going to be in the same positions regardless of where you are in the world. So right now, Uranus is about to station, right? It's going forward right now, but at the very end of this month, it's about to station at around 27, 28 degrees Taurus. And that's going to, I think, possibly trigger this outer three configuration at the end of this month, beginning of September. And my own personal pet theory is that it could, so connecting with the idea that Neptune in Pisces is associated with changes in monetary policy and economics. If it triggers this Neptune position, which is, is about to change into Aries, this Uranus station also triggers a very interesting configuration that's coming up in the horoscope. And I know this is a little off topic, but it's terribly interesting to me. So bear with me for 2 minutes.
Okay. So, and as we come close to ending, I don't want to, go too much further away than, too long. But if you could show you some of the, I said we are talking about, Kamala Harris, if you have the chart.
Oh, yeah. I'll just show you this one thing, and then we can look at Kamala Harris or anyone else you like. So this is the horoscope for Bitcoin.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so I told you, because of Neptune and Pisces and other factors we didn't discuss, like the world's monetary policies could be changing, right? Because there's currency starting to collapse, including the US dollar, arguably, depending on, what theory you believe. But here's the Bitcoin chart in the very center. That's the Bitcoin birth horoscope. The second wheel from the inside is the Bitcoin progressed horoscope. The Bitcoin progressed sun is about to exactly conjoin the Bitcoin natal Jupiter. Exactly. In about a month. This, my opinion, is going to be triggered by transiting Pluto, which is nearly the exact same position.
Yes.
And especially by the upcoming station of transiting Uranus, which is going to form a trine with this entire cluster. So my guess is that some event starting at the end of this month could trigger some kind of massive change in the state of the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, I agree, because I think that would happen at Uranus exiting Taurus. All those critical degrees when they get zero, especially slow planets, when they get 0 degree of any signs, especially the solstice point and equinox, they have a message 0 degree. And then when it's the 29th degree, exiting, like Pluto is going to do that for the last time. And I think he has a huge message for, CEOs, companies, financial, but also I have been looking for many, many years. When I worked in Boston, I worked for nonprofit organization, treatment for addiction, for treatment for addiction, and they have a lot of childhood abuse history, and is really connected, family abuse and any kind of abuse, lack of mother, lack of father. This axis of Capricorn and Cancer, where Pluto was. So I think this message has to do with this too, the family role into both getting people into addiction as self-medication, using drugs for self-medication of the emotional pain and trauma, and the family playing something about healing, getting those folks into treatment out. I don't know. That's something that I'm not a specialist in public health, but that's something that came across because a lot of movies were made at that time about this, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
trauma and abuse and drugs and family. In 2008, remember Pluto in Capricorn 2008?
Mm.
And now is going out for the third and last time out of Capricorn into Aquarius. So I think a huge message. And that's not just to play out because as you like asteroids, I also like the dwarf planets. I love Sedna. You know, I'm the major amplifier for Sedna, and Sedna is now 0 degree Gemini, waiting
Mm.
for Uranus to get into Gemini, and they are going to trine Pluto 0 Aquarius, and then Neptune sextile. It's going to be fun to see,
Well,
Sedna play.
I'm actually a little bit concerned about Uranus and Gemini because at least being an American, right, living in the United States, when Uranus is in Gemini, it tends to be, I believe, it's basically in maximum declination. So, right, so Gemini into Cancer, that's maximum declination for almost everything.
Maybe, maybe
when
go out of
Uranus,
bounds.
but one
Sometimes.
thing that most Western mundane astrologers know is that when Uranus goes into Gemini, the chances of the U.S. getting involved in a major war are very, very high.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right. So the last time, World War II, time before that, American Civil War, time before that, American Revolution. So,
what U.S. chart do you like?
I use the William Stickover's chart, which is, I'll show you the chart.
Okay.
Going back to,
We'd
be like on the menus again.
I'm stuck with the Sibley chart because he was the one by the revolution time in England. Mm-hmm. He said 12 degrees Sagittarius ascendant, and that's the degree where Pluto was when September 11th the planes crashed. Pluto was 12 degrees Sagittarius. So I stick with Sibley's, right. But right. I would like to know which one do you like to use?
So I don't have a very strong opinion, but my default chart is this one. It's 2 p.m. on the same day. So it's Scorpio ascendant.
Oh.
Now, William Stickovers, who is arguably the most active mundane astrologer in the West right now, he has a huge body of arguments of why this chart is the best. Some of those arguments are astrological in terms of, timing different events against the chart. Some of those arguments that William has are historical, meaning there's actually documentation that he's tracked down that strongly suggests a 2 p.m. start time for this chart.
That's good.
But again, Sibley seems to work for many people.
You see, Scorpio rising is truly a bald eagle figure, right?
Well, it's about many things. One of those things is, I would say, the projection of power. That's one of those things that Scorpio does. And if we're looking at it astrologically, we could say, well, this 4-degree Scorpio ascendant it's trine with this 5-degree Cancer Jupiter. And, that is somewhat descriptive of what America does. It projects its power and its cultural influence everywhere around the world.
Yeah. The interesting Alan, is like the way, let's say, French people and Brazilian people look at America. And I lived in America, in Miami and Boston for 18 years. So I truly think the Sagittarius, Sagittarius, like half man that is Harvard people, and half horse. It's, the cowboy is really east and west, the midsection, Midwest, it, for me, it's a really centaur, but that, as we say, we are not going to debate. And William is right in saying it has to be tested by prediction. Whatever chart, even our personal chart, when we rectify or rectify WR, E rectify
Right.
our charts, we have to see projection into the future. We have to start doing prediction with the new ascendant. And if it works, that's it, right? Do you agree?
I mostly agree. Yeah, I agree with the general idea. I I'm not convinced it's possible to rectify a chart with an extremely high degree of confidence. I've had people, rectify WREC my chart, and I know that very confident, highly competent astrologers can completely mess it up.
Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, I believe you.
Um, I would say, in defense of this chart, regardless of the birth time of this day,
I see.
it's an extremely Jupiterian chart because of the sun.
Yeah, I think your image froze. Let's. Yeah, well, I will play some. I think the image, if you are watching us, can you say hello if you can see me or Alan? And you just say hello. If you can see us, I'm going to run some ads just to. We are here back again, waiting for. I can see now the connection dropped. Alan's connection dropped. So in either way, I thank Mercury retrograde for allowing us to do the major talks. And I hope you guys that are watching us could leave any comments for us. And we keep talking about this at the astrology groups in English in Facebook, and also sometimes I have here an Instagram. So I will just show you guys if you'd like to suggest some topics for us to do, like bilingual or English speaking. If anyone would like to be on the live show, talk about your books and about your associations, I will really enjoy that. So this is the WhatsApp for Astrokabana. You see, plus is a +55 for Brazil, and Instagram Nando Astrokabana, and Facebook Guimarães Fernando. I would love to hear from you guys, and make our YouTube channel also bilingual. If you see around here, if you surf and our YouTube channel, you're going to see interviews that we have done in the past with some American astrologers, and my son friend Alan Oken was here, Frank Clifford, Naomi Bennett, Michael Lutton, and a good friend about business astrology. I forgot. I'm so sorry. And other, tables about, like recently, a few weeks ago, about Kamala Harris, that I was asking Alan to show us the chart of Kamala Harris, at least, and Donald Trump or whatever. It's good to see. So I think I will take advantage of to show his connection. This is the email to Alan that you can talk to him if you would like. Also, I have here, yes, okay, and to visit his website. It's very interesting to see all the his blogs and his research, and I think it's really, really interesting. I know a lot of friends in Canada and Australia and so many other places. They have a lot of things to do. Like we have this world scope Rod Chung in London, runs this. Oh, I think Alan is back here. I'm glad you're back. The connection dropped. So I might have here somewhere. Let me see if I can find his. Oh, yes, that's right.
Testing. Hello.
Oh, testing. Okay.
Okay, I don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I definitely don't hear you. So I'm gonna
I
check
can
my
hear.
speaker
I
settings.
can hear you.
Okay, say something. Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So, sorry, something happened with my internet connection, so I restarted. So I forgot how long our appointment today was. So
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you want to talk about something, I'm happy to talk about it. If you want to conclude,
if you can show just the Kamala Harris and Trump, the charts, because it's wonderful charts that you have in your blog. But since has been so long since then, I said, oh, maybe sometimes we can update with like new, French Macron's chart would be nice. King Charles. And other, Netanyahu. I would love to see Netanyahu and Putin, all this, because we are talking about, authoritarian and libertarian. So we have new leadership in the world that will be really interesting. But if we cannot do that today, whenever you have time to do it, like another article about, I would be glad to read. I would be glad to translate. Because I think it's really, really interesting for this change of times we are going through until 2026 to see, like, those new leadership. I would love to see that. Okay, or if I learn right, I will try to do that. I will be like, you are my mentor. I say, okay, I did homework and I did, and I get some private classes with you. Say, oh, this is my project. Your techniques I applied, and let me see if I'm wrong, if I'm right. Yeah, I would love to do that because I'm really, really impressed by your methods and your discoveries and everything else. So
yes, if you would like to look at a specific chart, pick one.
Kamala.
Okay, here we go. All right.
Because I really think she's going to be the next president, the first female, and the second international background.
Well, so I haven't studied this chart in depth.
Okay.
But William Stickevers, again, who I defer to on most things having to do with mundane astrology, he suggests that her astrology is extremely strong right now. And I think he may have been looking at her zodiacal releasing, which is a separate technique that it's a little harder to do in solar fire. But if we're looking at her birth chart, what I see with the Pallas placement is one thing that's interesting about Pallas in the 6th house, assuming an accurate birth time, is this is like an engineer's placement. So if I see this in a birth chart of somebody that I'm actually communicating with, usually, regardless of their communication ability or their average general intelligence or things like that, usually people with Pallas in the 6th are very good at solving specific, like, mechanical type problems. Like, so if you have an interesting logistical problem and you're in a room full of geniuses, the person with Pallas in the 6th is probably going to figure out like the most practical solution first. So that's interesting to me. In terms of the way I normally look at these political charts on the authoritarian to libertarian spectrum, there's a very weak connection between Pallas and Mercury and Pallas and the Sun, and these are libertarian factors. Pallas is square with Pluto, which is generally an authoritarian factor. Authoritarian factors are slightly more common in left-wing politicians than in right-wing politicians. Who knows why that is, but that's what I've seen. And then Pallas is widely conjunct the south lunar node. So in terms of the way that I normally interpret political charts, we are looking at a somewhat authoritarian personality, someone who's just gonna like, I want this, this is what's gonna happen.
Like Hillary.
Well, yeah, someone who gets things done, and in a way, if you're in a competitive environment, such as between nations, there's a pretty good argument that maybe you want a leader with some of those qualities, right? You don't want somebody who's going to always be fair, because maybe you want your leader to
like
your own nation, right?
Like so, Jimmy Carter. Both are Libras, you know, Kamala
right.
and Jim Carter, Libras, and different way of being Libras.
Right. So, but according to my system, the way I've developed it, this is, you know, an authoritarian leaning personality. If we look at culture, again, we're looking at the moon and the fourth house and possibly the sign of Cancer. So what's the moon doing? The moon is trine with the south lunar node that moves you to the left. And the fourth house is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is, what's Mercury doing? Where's Neptune? Oh, Mercury's, it's widely conjunct Neptune. I don't know if I count that or not. But basically the moon trine the south lunar node is the strongest factor for culture. So culturally left wing. Now, there's something that I did not go into great detail with on my writings on the website. They are documented, but not in great detail, which is there's actually a feminist formula.
Feminist?
So someone who's strongly associated with the feminist movements of the past maybe 50 to 100 years is going to have Pluto in aspect to basically Venus and the moon.
Oh, I see.
And so we've got Pluto conjunct Venus and in the house of the moon, in the fourth. So we're looking at somebody who fits the mold of high-profile feminists for the last century, which is arguably that's a left-leaning factor culturally. So, and then we haven't looked at economics left. So one place we would look is the planet Venus, and Venus is square with the nodal axis. That's a wild card, so we don't know. But the moon is trine with the south lunar node. So probably left-wing economically, almost definitely left-wing culturally, and more on the authoritarian side of things in terms of the Pallas placement. So basically we're looking at somebody on the Obama-Biden kind of universe. And you know, you can make arguments about whether this is good or bad. Yeah. Sometimes authoritarians are the best thing that can happen to a country. Sometimes they're the worst. So some other things that are pretty interesting is the sun is on very close to the position of the star Spica, S-P-I-C-A, which is considered to be extremely auspicious.
What is the degree you said?
Oh. Yeah, the sun is at 27.
The sun.
Libra. The sun is at 27 Libra. Spica is approximately 25 Libra.
Spica, okay.
Spica. So I don't track stars very carefully, but if you only keep track of 2 or 3 stars, Spica is one of them.
Yes, true.
Right? So anything around 25 Libra is good. And arguably, you can make an argument that you want the chief executive or the titular head of a country to be lucky. You want them to have good energy, whether they're a good person or not, right? Or lucky energy, because that energy presumably is going to, filter down to the rest of us in some way.
True.
So there is something. Well, did I have that? Yeah. I don't know if I should talk about this or not. This is going to be, what's the word? Controversial. But the black moon Lilith is this icon right here at 10 degrees of Sagittarius. I've done some limited research on that, and it does seem to be strongly associated with female reproduction or sexuality. So if I see, so I did, one of my research projects was I looked at the charts for maybe the top 20 high profile pro-abortion activists for the last century or two. And the thing I noticed about them, among many other factors, was the black moon Lilith, this body right here.
Yes.
Looks like a crescent moon with a plus sign under it, tended to be strongly configured with the asteroid Ceres, C-E-R-E-S. So symbolically, Ceres is displacement or removal, and the black moon, according to my current theories, is female reproduction or sexuality. So it makes sense that Ceres and the black moon together or in some kind of strong aspect would be very strong in the charts of pro-abortion activists. And that seems to be the case in the 20 or so charts I looked at.
I see. And is right between, I don't know if it's midpoint to two asteroids, Pallas and Juno.
Yeah, I'm getting there, but I'm working up to it. So the other thing I looked at was cult leaders, especially like cult leaders who are known for sleeping with all of their female followers.
Oh,
so
that's
and the thing I saw, so I have like hundreds of these tiny little research projects where I look at 30 charts for a particular aspect, and I try and find the pattern. It's just the political thing is the biggest research project I've done. So in the cult leader charts, these men are extremely good at manipulating women to sleep with them. They've tended to have the sun conjunct black moon Lilith. So again, that reiterates the idea black moon Lilith has probably, my opinion, based on a small data set, something to do with female sexuality. Okay, so here's the point that I'm going to make. This is going to be controversial, but I'll just say it because I'll say it. Pallas is, as you've read, Nando, from my various disorganized writings, indicative of something like intelligence or rationality or the ability to weaponize or logically, rationally use an ability or capacity in a chart, right? So Pallas conjunct the sun is something like weaponized charisma or self-image. Pallas conjunct Venus usually is weaponized charisma or charm or social ability. With Mars, it's the James Bond thing. It's extreme effectiveness in the physical realm, right? So whatever Pallas is next to or trying with is weaponized. Pallas conjunct Mercury, as you saw in Lula's chart, that's almost always indicative of extremely high, like measurable IQ or intelligence. So if Pallas weaponizes everything it's next to, and it's weaponizing the black moon Lilith on this chart, and if the black moon Lilith is actually indicative of something like female sexuality, then this would lend weight to the arguments that she actually employed, let's say, her sexual attractiveness to attain what it is she was trying to attain in the world. So that's a very controversial point. You can argue it either way. It is a matter of record that she had an affair with, Willie Brown from San Francisco, and that Willie Brown lost her political career. So I thought that was interesting. Now I've said it.
Yeah, it's free speech, right? So
right.
it's
free speech, but it's also your audience, and I want to say things that are interesting to your audience, and I don't want to, alienate them too much.
All right, yeah, and as I said before, anyone who is like watching us or is going to see like the recording, they are free to also to make comments and questions. And so I think it's really important to, because we are talking about something that we want to be like astrology, we want to be like science, or like knowledge, and be able to be free to choose our research, and to be in this adult environment where we can discuss controversial. I always remember the Alfred Kinsey report on sexuality. Remember the scandal it was like in the South or Midwest or whatever. But the thing that he did, like probably Freud, in Austria and Vienna or England. So we have to be able to, and of course we are not going to be responsible in going around, at the TV show, whatever. So in a contained place where we discuss research, and when we are working for the growth of astrology, I think that we have to have the right to say, oh, that's what I thought, that's what I found, that's what I think, and be respectful of each other, because it's good not to have bias, to be biased or have bias, but we have, as anyone who studies astrology say, we have our blueprint. We are, each one of us, sun sign, moon sign, whatever. We are more introvert, extrovert. We are more conservative. We are more liberal. We are more, rational or feeling type. All those Jung types, and that's true. It shows, and because we are human, and that's going to be like filters as we look things. Also, I have a good friend of mine, astrologer. He's a physician in quantum physics, and he's, that thing that said, when we look at something, we are already changing the experiment just by looking, by studying. If you take over, you might find something different, and it's science, it's physics, it's science. So we are going to imprint our energy, our intelligence, our values in whatever we touch, whatever we study. So this is my Sagittarius way of thinking.
Well, that's great, and I completely agree.
I want to thank you very much, because we went over the time. I didn't want to make you tired, or the people who are watching us. But so I want to thank everyone to being here today and listen to us, and those who are coming. But I will ask Alan to keep, publishing more about those, incredible contemporary charts that we have in politics today. And I will try my hand now, because now I understand properly, as like a workshop. Now I will try my hands on some of the candidates, because did something in political astrology or mundane astrology. It interests me very, very much. And that's what we our international group and Brazilian group are doing around elections and around national politics, international politics, because the world is a mess. We have war going on in the 20th century. In the third millennium, we thought technology is going to be differently, and now so we have internet, we have artificial intelligence, and we thought it would have progress, prosperity, and peace and love from the 60s to everyone, and that's not what we are seeing, and with green perspective. So Sagittarius don't like that. So I say, let's do something, let's move, and let's change what is possible. Thank you, Alan. If you can say your final words for our audience.
Oh, well, I just wanted to thank everyone for watching and listening, and take everything with a grain of salt. These are new theories by someone with maybe too much time on his hands, and could easily be wrong. My views on anything ranging from astrology to politics could end up being completely wrong. Only history can tell, right? So if you're interested in looking me up or reading some of my various disorganized piles of articles, My website is www.zot.net, www.zot, zebra, orphan, tiger.net. And that's my homepage, and it links to everything that I've kind of put up over the years. And again, thank you, Nando. Thank you, audience, and have a great day.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully you are able to leave some comments here, or we can talk on Facebook about this project. So Alan is starting. We are going to our 4th anniversary, the Astrokabana channel, YouTube channel in October. We start with Alan Oken and Frank Clifford during the pandemics. Start doing this. So now we are going back into the English and maybe Spanish also. We have friends coming to talk to us, to the Brazilian also. Well, I will run the final vignette and say goodbye to everyone. I'll talk to Alan on the backstage before saying goodbye.